Welcome back. In episode 5, we're going to look at file services in Windows Server 2016. In this episode, we're going to be using the FS01 machine. You'll want to go ahead and power it on if it's not already. Once your machine's powered on, let's click View Full Screen. And we're going to go ahead and log into the machine. And the admin password for this is blank. So we're going to go ahead and change that by pressing Ctrl-Alt-Insert, change password, blank, and enter a new password. Once your password's been changed, let's open the Network and Sharing Center and assign an IP address to our virtual machine. We're going to turn off IP version 6 and set the IP address statically 172.16.0.4. And the subnet is 255.255.255.0. Our default gateway is 172.16.0.1, and our preferred DNS is 172.16.0.2. Once you've done that, let's join this computer to the domain. Go to Start and click Control Panel. Click on System. And we're going to rename this machine to FS01, and we're going to join it to the lab.local domain. You're now being prompted for the administrator account and the administrator password you set in the last video. You'll be prompted to reboot. And click Restart now. It's okay if you receive those errors. We're going to address those later in the video. Once you're back to the login screen, press Ctrl-Alt-Insert, log in as other user, and type administrator, which is a local account, so we're actually going to change this to lab/administrator, and enter the password you made. So we're now logging in as the domain administrator to this machine. This is not suggested by Microsoft to log in this way, but it does two things. It gives us full access control, and the second thing is it verifies that this computer is joined to the domain and that DNS is working. Once the server manager loads, let's go ahead and click on Manage and Add Roles and Features. Click Next on the wizard. This is a role-based. Go ahead and click Next. We have FS01 selected, which is correct. And let's go ahead and check the file server. Why not go ahead and do DFS replication, add the features for that. Let's do file server resource manager, add the features for that as well. Data deduplication, I'd like to go over that. And I guess that's enough for our file and print services. Let's go ahead and check the print and document services while we're here. Click Next, click Next again, Next one more time, and we're doing this as a print server. We're not going to fool with distributed scan, internet printing, or LPD service. And we're going to go ahead and tell it to restart destination server if it's needed, and finally clicking Install. Alright, so installation has succeeded. We can go ahead and click close. And I'm going to begin on this video actually getting into the deep part of replication and also data deduplication. Those two are probably my favorite things as far as file services. Let's go ahead and let's do a shutdown on this guest, and that's FS01. And once it shuts down, let's look at the settings for that real quick. We're going to add a couple of disks just so we can play around with them. Let's go ahead and do edit virtual machine settings, and let's do add under hardware, and let's choose hard disk, click next, and SCSI's fine, and we're going to create a new virtual disk, and we're going to make the maximum size 10 gigabytes. We don't need anything huge. We can split, and I'm just going to see where this is going to put it. It's going to put it in our regular folder, so I'm just going to put it in the FS01 there, and do open and finish. Let's go ahead and add another disk, 10 gigabytes as well. Follow the wizard the same way we did. And let's click OK. Okay, so it already exists. I was thinking it did. So let's go ahead and double click on this. Actually gonna have to remove it, it looks like. So we're gonna have to add a hard disk again. SCSI, create, change this to 10. And we'll just name it -1. And click OK. Let's go ahead and power it back on. Now that our machine's powered on, let's go ahead and view it full screen and do Control-Alt-Insert to log in as the administrator for the domain. Alright, let's open up File Explorer down here. And right click and go to Manage. Which brings up Server Manager. I like to view this in the classic view, what I'm used to. And to do that, we just need to go to the top where it's Tools and then Computer Management. Let's go to Disk Management, and you can see we have two 10 gigabyte disks that are unallocated. Let's go ahead and go back here to Server Manager and open up our file and storage. And you can see that we have these disks offline. You can bring it online and then do essentially the same thing that you used to be able to do through Computer Management, which I showed you here. Let's go ahead and bring this disk 1 online. And let's do a new volume. And we can tell it 9.97 gigabytes. We can put drive letter E. Click next. Data deduplication. I'm going to leave it disabled now so I can show you how to set it up if this was a pre-existing disk. Alright, so that's finished. So if this was a pre-existing disk, all you would have to do is right click and come down here to volumes, do configure data deduplication. I'm going to leave it disabled for now because I'm going to show you something really cool. So we've got that disk. We can see it here, volume E. We need a large file that we can just test something with. So let's go and download. Let's just Google an XLS sample file. All right, and we will take, let's try this one. That'll work. 53 kilobyte, that's kind of small, but we can use it. So let's save this on the E drive. And let's open the folder. And let's copy. And let's paste this just a bunch of times. And I'm going to make a new folder and copy and paste it some more. All right, so let's look at the properties on here. So we've got 1.36 used. Let's go in here to configure data dedupe again and change this from 1 to 0. That way the files are immediately set up for dedupe. So 1.36. Go here to Task Scheduler. Let's go to Microsoft Windows dedupe. Go ahead and run background optimization. That's finished. Let's run throughput optimization. So let's take a look at this again. 1.37 used. So we can see it's freeing up some space. 1.34 used. So since that's completed, we can see that we reduced the file size. It wasn't huge to begin with because these were only 53 kilobyte files. But if you had this copied across your organization, multiple users with large files, this would be very beneficial. All right, so let's go ahead and clear these out. And we're going to go ahead and turn data dedupe back to 1 day instead of 0. Okay, so file server, or well, data deduplication, we covered that. Let's go ahead and look at file server. And let's do a new folder and just share it. And let's go to properties, sharing, advanced sharing, share this folder. We can allow everyone full control, that's fine for our lab, and tell it okay. Something else I want to look at real quick is volume shadow copy. Volume shadow copy works really well with data deduplication as well. By default, volume shadow copy is disabled, and that was because a lot of people were using it as a backup instead of having an actual Windows backup. So to manually enable it, right click on the volume, go to properties, click shadow copies, and then click enable. And you can tell it yes, Let's go into the settings. So you can have a limit for the maximum size. You can set the schedule for how often you want it to run. It does create a high input output on the file server, so that's important to keep in mind. The next thing I want to cover here is DFS, or distributed file system. For that, we're going to need to turn on our FS02 machine. And on here, we're actually going to add another drive like we did with FS01. So let's go into Settings, Add, Hard Disk, SCSI, Create New, and change this from 60 to 10. Click Next, and we're going to rename this to -1. Click Finish, click OK. Let's go ahead and log in. And like we did on the last one, we're going to change the password. So let's do Control-Alt-Insert, change password. It's blank currently. Enter our new password. It's been changed. That's great. Let's go ahead and set the IP address. And we're going to change it to 172.16.0.5. Turn off IP version 6. And we're going to join this computer to the domain. So let's go to System. And we're also going to want to rename it to FS02 and join it to the lab.local domain. We'll go ahead and reboot it and then log in as the domain administrator and go into Server Manager to install the necessary roles for DFS. While that's restarting, we can go ahead and set up DFS on here. Oops. DFS replication is installed. Let's go ahead and go back to FS02 and log in as the domain administrator. So we'll click Other User and put lab/administrator. And once this loads, we will open Server Manager and install DFS. Let's click on Local Server, Manage, Add Roles and Features, Next, Role-Based, Next, File and Storage Services, choose DFS Replication, Add Features, and Install. All right, let's go ahead and restart this since we did install a service. once it's rebooted, we'll log back in as the domain administrator. And to manage this, we actually need to install the DFS namespaces. I'm going to install that on FS01. So we'll go back into Server Manager, Local Server, Manage, Add Roles and Features. Go down to File and choose DFS namespaces. And click Install. Once that's installed, let's go ahead and click Close. So let's click Tools and DFS Management. Let's right click on Replication, click New Replication Group, Multi-Purpose, and we're going to call this one Test REP. Click Add on Server, and let's type FS01, and also add FS02. And we need to go back to FS02 and turn off the firewall. Let's go ahead and do that now. And let's turn off the domain firewall, click OK, and go back to FS01. Let's go ahead and click Next. And we want full mesh and replicate 24 hours a day, full bandwidth. Click Next. Primary member is FS01, and we want to add the replicated folder as E new folder and tell it OK. Then click Next. From FS02, let's click Edit. First, we need to set up the disk. So let's go back to Tools, Computer Management on FS02, Disk Management. Let's online the disk and initialize. New file system, new simple volume, and this is also going to be drive letter E. Go back to FS01, click Enabled, click Browse, choose E, we'll make a new folder, and click OK. Go ahead and click Next, click Create, and click Close. Alright, so replication will not begin until the configuration is picked up by the members of the replication group. The amount of time it takes depends on Active Directory services replication latency as well as polling interval. Go ahead and click OK. Expand the test rep group. They're both enabled. Let's click the verify topology. It's fully connected. And we can tell under connections that they're both enabled. Okay, so namespace, which is what we put in earlier, we're going to publish that in just a minute so you can check that out. So remember, we're on FS01. Let's go into New Volume E, go into New Folder, and we're going to create another folder called Test. So that was on FS01. If we go to FS02, E, New Folder, here in a few minutes, when replication picks up, we'll be able to see the test folder within here. So it's creating exact copies of one file server to another. Just to speed this up, I'm going to reboot the server FS02. Alright, so let's go ahead and log back in after that rebooted. And now we see the test folder under FS02. So from FS02, I'm going to create a new folder because these are fully replicated. And oops, wrong button. We're going to rename this to test2. A good use case for DFSR, distributed file system replication, is backups. So if you have a Windows server that's backing up, you can do that to another local machine on the same subnet, for example, in the same office, and use DFSR to replicate that backup to another location in another state or another facility. I use it personally between 3 sites as our backup process. Combine that with data deduplication and you have a very efficient backup process. So you're not only deduplicating before it's sent, but only block level changes are sent through DFS. So it's very efficient in network utilization. For example, a slow link. So we're back on FS01 and you can already see that we have the test2 folder. So that's pretty cool. All right, so let's look at namespaces next. We can share and publish in namespace. And we've already got it shared, if you recall, on FS01. So we can call this, well, we need to do browse first, show namespaces. There's no namespaces. So let's set up a namespace server as FS01. And we're going to call this one DFS test. Click next. It's a domain name, or it's a domain based namespace. So you can see the path to access this namespace. Go ahead and click create, success. So you can see that there. And we're going to call this rep test. So what it's doing is going to share and publish the replicated folder in a namespace. Shared folder names. Create shared folder, new folder. FS01, create or use existing shared folder, new folder. Publish using namespace path. And create create folder targets. We're going to share it and click close. So here's where this neat part about namespaces come in. If we do / lab.local, this information is coming from our domain controller. Currently we only have one DC. When we add additional DCs, or if you've ever managed an organization with multiple domain controllers, the namespace for netlogon and sysvol is published across the environment. So even though we're typing in lab.local, you're more than likely hitting a local or the quickest response domain controller to your workstation when you're pulling these up. So netlogin, whenever you pull it up, it's going to either be a random selection of the server or it's going to be the closest to you, not necessarily geographically, but the fastest response. All right, so lab.local / DFS test. Hit enter. And you can see that we have a shortcut to rep test. When we go into it, you can see that it appears like we're on lab.local. When you go into test 2, we're going to leave this how it is for now. In a lab with installing a client with Windows 10, we're going to look at this in a little bit more detail and look at Resource Monitor to see how it calculates which network share is connecting to. This is how you create a highly available network share. by setting up replication between 2 or more file servers, and then setting up a shared namespace. That way you ensure the files are always available, things are replicated up on your schedule. This is very useful for branch offices. So say you had 3 locations, the home office, for example, could have the master copy, and you could replicate read-only or even full mesh changes to the other 2 branches using this. The next and final topic we're going to cover in this video is file resource management. So let's go back to Server Manager on FS01, and let's click on Tools and then File Server Resource Manager. Within here you see quota management, file screening management, storage reports, classification, and file management task. We're going to drill down into each one of these options. The first item we have is quota management. Within it we have quota templates, which are predefined settings of hard and soft templates. Then you have the quotas tab where we can actually create our own. Let's set the quota path to E and new folder, and create quota on path, and let's use a 100 meg template. Click create. Once that's finished, let's go back to new volume E, new folder, and let's copy file from system32. So this is a 124 megabyte file. It should not allow us to put it here, and it doesn't. And it says 121 megabytes is needed to copy the item, delete or remove file so you have enough space. So it's saying we've used our quota limit. You can right click on the quota and view quotas affecting folder, and it shows you what folders are actually in there and creates a filter. So let's go ahead and view all. You can have multiple quotas on a file path. You can reset peak usage, disable, delete. Let's go to file screening. This is where you can limit the file types. So you can block audio and video files, block email files. You can custom define. First you have to have a path in there so we can see those settings. So active, do not allow users to save unauthorized files, and we can create, and we'll call this .txt. Oops. You can have it set up to send an email to the user, create an event log, run a command. You can report who's saving these types of files. So that's pretty convenient of keeping unwanted software like an executable in a file share. You've got file screen templates, which are predefined as we saw in quotas. File groups, it's the different types of file groups. As you can see, there's .txt, which was also within text files, but we created this one on our own. Storage reports management. Let's do generate reports now, and let's look at files by owner, for example. And let's change our scope to the whole volume of E. We can click all of those and click OK. And we can wait for the report and view it real time. Once it comes up, double click on the HTML. We can see that there's 2 owners, 86 files, total space, temporary files, the file names. A bunch of these are hidden system files within the folder. Classification. Oh, you have to create properties first. Access denied assistance message. So you can set up the email settings for classification. Classification isn't something I would recommend using. The best thing, or the most commonly used items, is quotas and file screens. File management task. You can create tasks for different users. You can create it for different folders. You can have files expire. You can have encryption of files. I have to change this back to file expiration. Notification, so you can email users before their files expire. Create an event, run a command. You can report on it. There's a lot of options here, very powerful with Server 2016, more so than any previous version of Windows Server. Again, my favorite things in here are the storage reports, file screening, and quotas. You can schedule reports under storage reports, which is handy. As we saw with quotas, you can have it notify the user if they're approaching their quota. And you're probably going to use quotas more frequently with shared folders or like a roaming profile or redirected folders. So that concludes this video of DFS, reviewing all the file service resources. We covered namespaces, sharing of folders. In the next video, we're going to look at adding a second domain controller. So join us back for that one.